Dr. Mattson's new book is Digital Overwhelm. And probably you hear that title and think, oh my goodness, I have to listen to this conversation. I need to read that book. And you would be right, because so many of us experience this on a daily basis. Craig Mattson is an organizational researcher who serves as a professor of communication at Calvin University. He's written several books and numerous essays, often exploring the communicational complexities of organizational life. But when he's not writing and reading and podcasting, yes, he has his own podcast, and I'm going to ask him the title. What is the title?
I'm all too eager to tell you, Angela. It's the Mode Switch Pod.
The Mode Switch Pod.
Yes.
And he's not podcasting and being really smart, teaching classes and writing amazing books. He's enjoying the natural world, hiking, running, and playing driveway pickleball.
Yes.
Greg lives with his wife, Rhoda, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and their 4 adult children live and study and work across the Midwest.
Yes.
Dr. Mattson, I'm so happy to have you with me today.
I am honored to be here. You're going to have to call me Craig, right? Because we're not in enrolled classes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to give...
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Give everybody, to know, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's going
to... For whole minutes at a time, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I tell people that, like, when you say you have a PhD, people are like, you must be really smart. I'm like, I'm really smart about like 3 things. No, like there's 3 things that I know really well. And basically that's all of us in the world. Like everyone is really smart about 3 things.
Yeah, that's well said. The list of things I'm ignorant of is so long.
It's so large.
You and I share fields, right? I mean, to some degree, like you wrote the book Always On, which is about digital life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm writing about digital overwhelm. Do we share fields of media theory or what?
Well, my field is actually like practical theology.
Okay.
And so I'm more of in the theology, psychology, philosophy realm of the digital world. And so I'm always thinking about how does it impact us as people, our organizations, and like how can we, and especially like our spiritual practices, how does it impact our emotional and mental and spiritual well-being? But maybe there's some crossover. I mean, I feel like there's crossover because your book is absolutely addressing.
Right. Yeah. So you come from a theological and psychological side. I'm coming from a communicational and media side, and with a lot of attention to like the workplace. But I cannot not talk about spiritual practice. I can't avoid thinking about people's psychology.
How would you describe digital overwhelm?
So my way of thinking about it, so I'm a Michigander and I love Lake Michigan and Lake Superior and often went camping with my family alongside those lakes. And any big body of water is going to have 2 kinds of currents in it. It'll have surface currents. In Lake Michigan, those can be dangerous. They might be riptides, and they might be just longshore currents. But they're there and they're a factor. And, you've seen the beach flags out with like, what kind of day is it? What kind of currents do we have there? Those are surface currents. And for me, those are like the technological disruptions that happen in our lives. They just kind of sweep through and suddenly it could be a small thing like I got to update my phone's operating system, or it could be a really enormous thing like Chat GPT and the whole AI revolution. But in any case, they're currents. And they carry us along, and they sometimes take us to places we don't want to go, like when you spend an hour inadvertently trying to figure out how to get more memory on your iPhone by deleting videos or something. So that's the one kind of current. The other kind of current, the overwhelm part, is what you call an upwelling current. And this is a kind of from your deeps, so to speak, from the deeps of who you are, this upwelling of feeling. And when you bring those 2 things together, the technological change and innovation and development with your own sort of emotional experience of those things, you get something like digital overwhelm.
You talk about digital overwhelm, and I'm really appreciative of this in terms of workism, hustle culture, and what you talk about as like capitalist spirituality. Now, this could be sort of or an earful for people who are listening. I'm wondering if you could walk us through
Mm,
either one of these things or maybe even all three, and what
mhm,
they have to do with digital overwhelm, why it was important for you to highlight these things.
mhm,
Because the thing is that we all kind of know it's a problem. We can hear what you're saying and go, yes, I
mhm,
understand, Craig, like this digital overwhelm is a thing in my life. And both currents do happen at different times, sometimes in the same day. What does this have to do with workism, hustle culture,
mhm.
capitalist spirituality?
So, technological innovation, as you know from writing your own book on this, doesn't happen in any kind of vacuum. It's
Mhm,
always intersecting with other kinds of factors and forces and energies in our lives. For me, my preoccupation is I'm really hoping to help working communities thrive. That's my goal. If we
mhm,
could do life better together when we're at work, I feel like that would be a really healing thing and a restorative thing in society. But unfortunately, our experience of work is often a site for grief and for disappointment and for feeling isolated and fractured and so forth.
mhm,
So I'm thinking when I talk about workism, that's a term that comes from Derek Thompson. He has identified workism as a kind of religion, like a
mhm,
substitute religion for, especially for Americans, where you get your meaning and your identity and some sense of transcendence from the toil of your hands. And so I felt like in talking about digital overwhelm, I had to talk about that religion. There are different names for it. You could talk about the kind of, I think I referenced the high priests of late capitalism, the people who tell you how to be a late capitalist better, And I feel like sometimes when we think about new technology, we think, yeah, this will help me do it. Like this will help me achieve that meaning at work better and faster and more efficiently. And this will help me get control and mastery and, make me successful in this weird world of late capitalism today. So that's why I felt like we had to talk about that. How's that sound to you? What's that making you think of?
Well, I'm thinking about Anne Helen Peterson's book, How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation. I think it's like workism, like and you know the exact title? I'm not
It's like can't even?
can't even. Thank you.
Yes.
How Millennials Became
Gosh.
the Burnout Generation. And it's
Yes.
all about workism and
Mhm.
exactly what you're talking about, which is like that for so many of us. So there were economists in the 90s. I don't know if you've heard about this, but they were writing about how by about now in this time in American culture, we would probably have a 10 to 15-hour work week. Can you imagine? And they were writing about how this would happen because we would be paid enough to be able to buy what we needed, the basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs, necessities. Like most people would only have to work 10 to 15 hours a week. And they were wondering, what will we do with all of our time? And it's absolutely ridiculous to think about now, right? Like for us, it just sounds ridiculous. One, because of inflation. Like they didn't anticipate COVID and how much everything would cost. But more importantly, it's to your point, they didn't anticipate how much work would become a sense would cultivate a sense of meaning and identity in people's lives.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's hard to stop. They didn't anticipate that it would be difficult for us to stop working because we would have to stop making a self.
Mhm.
We would have to stop like developing like an
Yeah.
identity and
Yeah.
recognition and doing for the sake of finding ourselves. Who wants to rest from trying to find myself, from deepening my sense of meaning?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not everyone in American culture. There are plenty of people who work and don't find a lot of meaning in it. And that's
Right.
not where they develop their sense of meaning and they work literally to survive.
Mhm.
But there is a good portion of American culture that would allow digital overwhelm in their life because they are really obsessed with work.
Mhm. I think one of the conversations that sparked really triggered, that's not the right word, sparked much of the reflection in this book was with a millennial. So I'm a Gen Xer. I'm in a generation that hasn't always been particularly reflective about work. Like we just get shit done basically and keep our heads down and suppress our emotions and so forth. Makes us kind of reliable, but also just sort of messed up. But anyway, I was sitting across a coffee shop table with a friend of perhaps 20 years or so, and so proud to see my friend flourishing. She was running her own company. She was getting good clients. She was doing work that I thought was like good for the world. And she said, "Yeah, Craig, I don't think my work means anything." In that moment, I felt kind of gut punched by that. What? How could it not mean anything? But the longer I've walked with that story, I was sort of speechless in the moment. I didn't have a good, I just took notes. But the longer I've walked with that, I think that what she meant was it's not something that I'm going to worship. It's not something that I'm going to make a god out of. It's
Mhm.
not something that's even going to make me who I am. And, you know, I like anything, it can be taken too far. It can become a kind of detachment or a dispassionate engagement with your work that might not be good for the world,
Mhm.
much less good for you. But I like it as a corrective. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's almost, it's I find it when I talk with people who find meaning in their work and they want to, I'm like, I'm happy for them. I'm not mad about that for them, and I'm not like, you have to change this. Similarly, when I meet people that are like, I don't find a lot of personal meaning from my work, I'm
Hmm.
really trying to learn from that and to think like that's also really okay. There can be
Hmm.
plenty of other places that you find meaning in the world.
Hmm.
I think where for me where I want to help people when it comes to their emotional, spiritual, mental well-being, physical well-being is to say like when your thirst for meaning at work leads to digital overwhelm and then to physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual unwellness, like
Hmm.
when it really impacts your well-being negatively, that's where I really, that's where in this conversation I think I'm inviting people to really try to address like and think about how do I what does it mean to flourish in a digital landscape?
Yeah.
And so I'm
Yeah.
wondering, you use this word, flourishing. You said this person, this millennial you were talking to was flourishing.
Hmm.
Did you have a particular vision in mind of like what human flourishing is in a digital landscape that
Hmm.
you wanted to then write about that would help, to kind of help people get there?
That is that's the $64,000 question, I think. What does this look like when it's not overwhelm? Like,
Mhm,
what would this book have looked like if I had entitled it probably an unsellable, unmarketable title like Digital Balance or Digital Health
mhm.
or Digital Well-being? I don't know. Maybe people would have glommed onto that. But what does that look like? I think let's think this through out loud a little bit, Angela. So I think one thing it looks like is that you're not fused to any of your devices. I actually wonder if digital health looks like you can't find your phone. You don't have your laptop within reach. Like it's there. It's in your life. It's a thing you use. But if somebody says something to you and they want to put something on your calendar, you have to say, just a minute, I'm going to have to go get my phone. I wonder if that might be digital health. But what do you think? Like, what's it feel like for you when you are flourishing digitally?
It means living without urgency
Hmm.
in relationship to social media. And I include email in there, texting, and so on.
Hmm.
When I feel like I need to respond as quickly as possible
Ooh, yeah,
to everyone and,
yeah.
I'm not flourishing. I'm like that is getting like so much of my attention that very few other things are getting my attention in life.
Hmm.
For me, so
Huh.
responding when it makes sense,
Hmm.
when like sitting down, like I really try to have different times of the day that like, okay, I'm responding to DMs on Instagram at this time. I am responding to email at this time. I am responding to this text when,
Hmm.
I'm like saving this voice memo for when I have more space in my day to respond
Hmm.
well to this. Also, digital flourishing or like flourishing in a digital landscape for me looks like, and it's, probably cliche, but just being really present to other people when I'm in person with them
Hmm.
and not looking at my phone constantly. And it's like a practice I've had to develop in my life is like,
Hmm.
and that's why for me, this has been a really wonderful way to flourish with my
Yeah.
cell phone is for anyone who's listening, I have a leather ish, I don't know if it's pleather, whatever case, pleather, probably case on my phone that covers the phone and goes around the back. One reason is because I'm incredibly clumsy and I drop my phone all the time. But the other reason is that it covers it so that, like, when I put it down and when I'm with people, I can't see that I'm being notified by
Hmm.
things, like by text or being called by people. I'm
Yeah.
present with those people. So that, like, digital flourishing, like, or flourishing in a digital landscape looks like having a phone cover.
I love that. I think another way, I really like this question. I think another way that I experience digital flourishing is when there's this kind of sense of like surplus affect that can sometimes happen in digital spaces remarkably quickly.
Hmm.
So like as you do digital networking, sometimes you feel this kind of strange, intense sort of joy in connecting with almost a stranger. But I remember one of the people I talked to for this book, a Gen Z person
Mhm.
who did tutoring online, and she thought that the tutoring via Zoom enabled a more egalitarian and actually, in a strange sort of way, a more intensely connected experience than it might have if they'd been in the room together. So there's no data on this. She was just like, this is my hunch, this is my sense
Mhm.
of things. But your cat streams through the screen and the other person sees what's on your wall, and they're often in some kind of more perhaps intimate space of your life.
Mhm.
And there's a kind of, it could go bad. It could be harmful. I feel the caution rising in me as I say this, but I do think that that's a gift too, that sense of extra affect that can come. And I need that sometimes. I need that sometimes. It does seem like we're also talking about psychological safety, which is a real big
Mhm.
term today in organizational work culture conversations. I remember an interviewee who talked about the challenges of being in a physical workplace and just kind of having to watch her angles all the time. So, proximity questions like, how close do I come to this person? My supervisor, he's coming awfully close to me right now. I feel uncomfortable about that. And I feel like I'm having to maintain a kind of, I'm doing extra cognitive work to kind of keep myself like focused on this task when he is this close to me. So I think sometimes digital life enables flourishing because it simplifies the encounter and we don't have to think about a million things, just like 500,000 things. So that's another way I think that it
Mhm.
might create flourishing or possibilities for flourishing.
Yeah, you draw on wisdom literature in your book
Mhm.
to try to address some of the tensions in contemporary life, which
Mhm.
I find really helpful. And I'm wondering about if you could talk a little bit about the inspiration that, when you had this moment that you're like, okay, the wisdom literature, we need to draw on this for digital overwhelm. Like, especially when you think about like being a leader or in the workplace,
Mhm.
where did this inspiration come from? And how does the wisdom literature like help guide
Yeah.
leaders and in
Yeah.
contemporary life?
I love to talk about the wisdom lit, so I'm grateful you brought this up. So, for people unfamiliar with wisdom literature, we're talking in the Old Testament. We're talking about the book of Job. We're talking about the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Proverbs. Those are the most common ones. Sometimes people will lump in other books as well. I talked about certain psalms
Mhm.
from the Psalter that are wisdom psalms. I just love these books. I think that might be the personal reason. I love Ecclesiastes. I've always loved it since I was in high school.
Mhm.
I love the book of Job. I've spent lots of time talking about these things with other people. What's a little bit startling is that even people who are not Jewish or who are not of the Christian faith are drawn to books like the book of Job to talk about technologized life
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
And I'm fascinated by that. There's something about Job trying to make sense of providence, the weird twists and turns and tragic turns of his life, and people today trying to understand the kind of weird background of technology in our lives, the force that it has for good and ill in our lives. And I'm pretty often terrified about what AI is going to mean for us today.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm kind of constantly conscious that I'm in the presence of like what the book of Job refers to as Leviathan, this enormous creature that's like
Mhm.
potentially devastating and destructive, like a kind of monster. And there are days when I feel that way about Perplexity and Claude and Chat GPT-5 and so forth. So yeah, I think that's why I turn to those books.
I think it's incredibly helpful and meaningful and important. I think that oftentimes, when a workplace is not a spiritual workplace, or when people are not particularly spiritual or religious, they might say like, oh, something like collection of wisdom literature from the Hebrew scriptures has nothing to do with me. There are so many other types of literature that we learn from. So I'm just like, why not? Why can't an
Mhm,
organization or a leader or a
mhm,
person who would say that I'm not particularly religious, why can't they learn
mhm.
from sacred literature like this that has helped people for centuries?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that you draw on this, because they're indeed like called wisdom literature, because they are a bunch of sayings and stories that we can learn from
Mhm,
about what it means to be discerning. The framework for the book is like signaling things, emailing things, fixing things, right? I think is one of them too. And so
mhm,
what you're trying to do, I think what you do is you take these different modes of communication in
mhm,
contemporary life, and it's very relatable. Okay, like, yes, this is one mode. Like, I have to email things all the time. And you're trying to be helpful and to say, how do I not get overwhelmed in this email space, right? How
mhm,
do I do this in a way that's more deeply human and good
mhm,
for me? Could you take one of those things that
mhm,
maybe like a chapter that was particularly fun for you to write
mhm,
and talk about one thing that you would
mhm.
offer listeners?
I'd be so pleased to. That's a dangerous question to ask an author, right? Yeah, I'll do the emailing one. You mentioned that, and that's a grief point for many of us, a pain point. I remember when I started a job in, like, I guess I was 30 or so. I started a new job, and I remember I couldn't check my email except by going into the office, and I had to, like, pull the big switch on the back of the PC, which was
Mhm,
sitting, lumpinly on my desk. And what a strange and different world it became in just a few years, right? Then the inbox was less adjacent to my life and more central to my work. And I can almost remember that transition when it became sort of addictive and not just like a fun thing to check to see if anybody wrote me. So I decided to think about how to, you know, email in a way that, like you said, helps you to recover humanness. And I think there are different pieces of advice on this. There are lots of advice, and there's good wisdom out there. Cal Newport has written a book, A World Without Email, and Sherry Turkle has written about, the ways that our digital tech interrupts the conversations of our lives, in-person conversations.
mhm,
And so, like, these are wise voices, and I value them. But very often, these voices tend to say what you need to do to get sane and healthy in your inbox is to practice some kind of technological minimalism.
mhm,
Try to reduce your tech use. And for many people, especially the working professionals I was talking to, they just didn't have that choice. Like, that was a certain kind of technological privilege that they didn't have. And so I had to think, okay, I got to say something other than do that less. That just wasn't necessarily an option.
mhm,
And so I tried to use a metaphor of voice for thinking about email. So, voice is made up of, like, force, how loudly you're speaking, pitch, the frequency of your speech,
mhm,
the quality of your voice. I've been thinking about your vocal quality, Angela, and just like you think about that a lot in podcasts. Like,
mhm,
what do the voices feel like? And then the rate, the time. And if you think about the voicing of your email, like email almost like you talk, then I think that that's one way back into a kind of humanness. You think about what kind of force, so to speak, what kind of volume is this email, should it have for this other person? What's the rate of response which I should give to this? What's going to make them feel a little bit crowded because I'm talking in a way that is too intrusive. So that was one way that I could kind of recover the gift of email, was to think about how I was voicing it. What does this sound like? What's the voice of my email? And I don't know. Like, I don't think the solution to everything is minimize and slow down. I don't know if we're always allowed to do that. Sometimes we're compelled to move quickly, and we're compelled to move in a complicated way. And the wisdom literature is constantly acknowledging the ways that we're not masters of our situation. So I think sometimes being willing to laugh at yourself and to recognize the ridiculousness of the predicament that you've gotten yourself into technologically is the best way to go. So those are a few thoughts on the mode of emailing.
I think this is so helpful that you're saying that the answer is not always do it less and don't do it quickly. Because even as I said, I feel like I'm flourishing when I'm not having to respond to
Mm.
everything right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But that can be a luxury, and when you're working, like,
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, no, there is an urgency
Mhm.
to this particular project. You
Right.
do have to get this done. You do have to email this person back. You do have to fix this in
Yeah.
this way, and
Yeah.
so I really appreciate that your book attends to the actual real lived lives of
Mhm.
working leaders and people today.
Mm.
I'm wondering though, what kind of conversation would you hope, like, if you could, if every leader in the world that's leading an organization or a workplace would listen to you, Craig, and you said, this is how you address digital overwhelm in your workplace, in your organization. Like, where should they start?
Boy, I'm going to change my answer by the day on that one. Because I think I have different moods about what leaders need today.
Yeah.
My mood right now, where I am right now, is that organizational leaders need more contact with their mid level managers, with the people in the middle, the mediators of the organization. I think all too often we treat the people in the middle as just conduits. Get this to your team and get it to them as fast as you can.
Hmm.
And we forget that these mid level managers, who, by the way, right now suffer some of the steepest declines in engagement,
Right.
according to this year's report from Gallup on the state of the workplace. Like they have seen the steepest decline of any other worker. So that's why I'm in this mood right now. I think the leaders need to connect through multiple modes of communication with their middle managers. What do you think?
I love it. I I feel like I had Elon Babchuk on.
Oh, yes. I love
You're
it.
a mutual friend, right? Yeah. Well, he's not my friend. I mean, I've had him on the podcast. I wish I knew him better.
Yeah.
But I think you said, yeah, you are acquaintances or friends.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He was saying how there's research that the higher up you get, like the less, like your emotional intelligence like goes down and the less connected you are to everyone around you.
Yeah.
Right. So the very things that you do
Mhm.
that help you to reach the top of an organization, of hierarchical chart,
Right.
oftentimes, oftentimes it's those sorts of things that get you there. But
Right.
then you like those are the things that you lose the quickest.
Right.
And so I love what you're saying that, like,
Mhm.
finding different modes of connection and communication
Mhm.
with the people on your team who are the middle managers, which then they reach so
Mhm.
many other people in the organization. And so you're able, if you can connect with them, then many people or everyone in your organization gets
Mhm.
connected with. And I
Yeah, I
think,
think
yeah.
oh, sorry. I think that I'm a little uneasy in this advice because it does require a certain level of digital flexibility, frankly. So we talked about digital minimalism. I think we also have to talk about flexibility today. And it's a lot to ask of leaders. They're already carrying a lot. And
Mhm.
right now, it is the suckiest time in recent memory to be an organizational leader. It's so polarized. It's so intense. There's so much change. So, like, all respect to organizational leaders. But yeah, practicing a certain kind of flexibility with your mid level managers, not missing the signals. Like sometimes you're like, I haven't received an email, so we're all good, right? But not missing those less obvious signals, being aware of when they're trying to advocate for something, they might be advocating from a place of disempowerment. And so it doesn't look to you like they're making the case, but they may be advocating. And I could go on, but recognizing your middle managers are going to use different modes of communication than you do. You
Mhm.
use certain modes to get to the top, like Elon is saying, but they're not there. They're in a different place. And those modes might not be recognizable to you, but learning to recognize when somebody's signaling, when somebody's advocating, when somebody's wishing for a conversation, when somebody just needs you to send a 2-line email, whatever it is, it's going to require a certain amount of communicative flexibility.
I love this, and I think the thing is that we can think that other people other I'm sorry, other projects or other things are more important in our work, and yet the more that I think we're doing what you're talking about with middle management, and then they are doing that hopefully with the other everybody else in the organization, the more engaged everyone is.
Hmm.
So then the more
Yeah.
efficient and excellent your organization is.
Yeah.
I I just think that that's at the heart of what makes most companies flourish that are
Yeah.
good companies that are doing good for the world is what you're describing. I'm wondering, to kind of I know I wish we could keep talking because we've
This is
both written
fun.
about this and this is like for both of us, I think at the heartbeat of a lot of our work that we do in like nurturing the lives of leaders. And I'm wondering for you, how has your life changed
Hmm.
since writing this book? Like in what practice,
Hmm.
ethical or spiritual practices have you taken on that have
Yeah.
really impacted your day to day, perhaps?
Thank you for asking that. That's a provoking question in the best way. So, one thing I notice as I step back from my digital practices is that I can do well for short periods of time, and then I have periods of loss as well, where I just lose my footing. And frankly, right now, I think I'm in one of those phases of
Mm,
I don't have my footing. Earlier this year, I felt like I was doing better. I had sort of committed to specific practices in regards to my phone and my laptop, and I think, even my partner was noticing like, "Hey, that's going well."
yeah.
Um, but then this summer, I started to develop, to do some experimenting with a social media strategy, and wow, I've gotten sucked into the vortex, and I'm realizing, okay, it's time to regroup. It's time, time to step back from this and think, what do I need on my phone? I don't think I need all the social media apps that I'm doing strategic work on. I don't think I need them for instant access. So let's delete some of those apps. And I'm trying to practice. I shouldn't say I'm trying. I do this like all just most of my adult life. I have
Mhm.
journaled longhand, and I've kept that up, and that's a saving thing, I think, in the sense that it puts me in an analog place every single morning. But lately I've been trying to kind of pick up that ancient practice of examine as I'm journaling, not just like detailing the things that went right or wrong the day before, but thinking of specifically, how am I sensing God's presence? How am I grateful? What am I grateful for? What's giving joy and consolation? What's making me feel desolate and afraid? And so that sort of longhand journaling has really been an ongoing source of help for me. I wonder about for you.
I think that similarly, that in recent months, I got really I think, caught up in the marketing aspect of social media
Hmm.
and really sort of or at least in the spring, maybe,
Hmm.
I'm feeling really overwhelmed by that of just how do I keep
Hmm.
like, for so many of us, including both of us, like, to get your work out into the world these days requires some level of marketing knowledge in the social media space.
Yeah.
And so I found myself really getting caught up in like every single time I was getting online, how can I
Yeah.
utilize this time effectively for work?
Hmm.
Which is like very much against everything I said and always on, very much against everything that I've like spoken about for years about the digital landscape.
Yeah.
Because for so long, my practice was and it is now, again, like, I realize this about myself, and I've tried to, like, do 180 on it.
Hmm.
I mean, it's still there, it's very much there, and like, always grappling with it, but for so long, I would get onto social media with this sort of pair of glasses on, so to speak, where I am, like, looking for people to lament with and people to rejoice with, and
Yeah.
that helped to
Hmm.
it helped me to not make every time I get on social media about me.
Hmm.
Instead of trying to see it was a corrective to a landscape that's really encouraging us to
Yeah.
seek recognition and affirmation and collect people to follow us in a
Yeah.
world that, like, really encouraged that. My subversive action was, I'm gonna look for people
Hmm.
to rejoice with and to lament with,
Yeah.
and if
Yep.
that's, like, the framework with, like, how I get online, then I'm looking for that instead of looking for recognition and
Right.
followers and affirmation.
Right. That's kind of gorgeous. I really love that. I think it's also weirdly like effective digital communication strategies. Just celebrate other people's work. Like I read that, like it becomes like a task list item, but it's also, like you said, a good way to recover your bearings as a human in these
Mhm.
sometimes dehumanizing spaces. Thanks for that. I'm going to
You're
take your
welcome.
advice. I like that.
Yeah, because it becomes about nurturing relationship, which is
Hmm.
what every social media site said that they're really were like about when they were started.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this has been a really enriching conversation. I deeply appreciate your
Mhm.
time. How can people connect with you, Craig?
So I would love for them to check out my book, Digital Overwhelm, which is purchasable on any sort of site from Amazon to, other sort of book sites, online booksellers.
I love Bookshop for anyone listening. Bookshop
Thank you.
is
Yeah.
great.
Bookshop. All right. We'll plug them. So anything to do besides supporting the Bezos wedding, I think is what we should be trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good way to connect, and I'm the sort of I think I'm like just any author, I would love to connect with readers about that. So you can find me on Substack. I write a newsletter about work culture called The Mode Switch, and then I have an Instagram presence as well, also called The Mode Switch, and so I'd be delighted to connect with people that way. Of course, everybody's got a website, so I got a website. You can check me out. I'll pop up in your Google search pretty quickly. But it's been a joy to talk with you, and I'm grateful for the kind of peculiar pleasure that comes with like having just enough overlap between our projects that
Mhm.
we know what the other person's talking about, but also you have like other areas of expertise that you're bringing to this conversation. And I think the attention to the spiritual dimensions of this isn't something that I'm always getting in podcasts. So
Yeah.
thanks for that gift.
Well, I'm so grateful to you for your time today and looking forward to the next time that we get to talk. And to all of our listeners, we're really appreciative of you taking the time, whatever you're doing today, to listen to this conversation. And I do hope that you will get Digital Overwhelm as a physical copy, or you can listen to it on Audible and listen to Craig's voice more. Because it's about the realities of your life right now. He talks to real people, he draws on real stories throughout the book, and offers real help for all of us in this digital landscape that we're living in.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.